You are listening to Autistic Stuff for Autistic People, a podcast in which a few autistic friends talk about their lived experiences and special interests. We are here to invite you into our world as autistic peers sharing relatable conversations about life as autistic people. This podcast is for autistic people and anyone that lives with, works with, or loves an autistic person. I am Aradia. I am the creatively autistic coach and also the podcast producer for Fox and Raven Media.
And I am Cheryl. I'm an autistic peer support coach and body talk practitioner who helps people understand and accept themselves more fully.
Welcome back to another episode of Autistic Stuff for Autistic People. Today we are going to talk about traveling as an autistic person, which seemed like a logical extension from our topic last time about navigating the holiday season. This episode's purpose falls into the lived experiences and practical autism information categories and was suggested by Cheryl, who I know has a lot of travel experience to draw on. So I will turn it over to them to introduce in more detail.
Thank you, Aradia. I'll start off by saying that I have had the privilege of traveling quite a bit in my life within Canada and globally for work, volunteering, and vacations. There is a part of me that loves the adventure of traveling, exploring, and learning about new people and cultures all over the world. There's another part of me, a really big part of me, that struggles quite a bit. Almost all of my traveling took place before I discovered I'm autistic. So many of the things we're going to talk about today are things that I would have greatly benefited from had I known about my unique wiring, needs, and challenges as an ADHD person. So if you're an autistic person who likes or needs to travel for any reason, or if you're someone who will travel with an autistic person at any point, this episode is designed with you in mind. We're going to talk about all phases of traveling, from researching, planning, and packing with our nervous systems in mind, navigating busy airports and train stations, or other modes of transportation, deciding whether to disclose your disability and accessing assistance, understanding and preparing for our physiological and sensory needs, which can go into total overwhelm when we're traveling, what to do in case of a meltdown or shutdown, which is very common when we're outside of our regular environment and outside of our routines, arriving in a new place, allowing for jet lag, deciding on what foods and activities you can handle while staying safe and healthy, and managing the gap in expectations between what you hope happens on your trip and what actually occurs. So I thought we would start with both of us describing some of the best parts of traveling as an autistic person and some of the biggest challenges, along with strategies we have developed through trial and error.
So much trial, so much error.
100%. So what's the best part of traveling for you? Like, what do you look forward to?
So I've traveled a lot less than you, I think. For me, travel has almost always been to go see family. And I've always maintained that I like being traveled. I hate traveling because getting from one place to another has been so stressful. And yeah, knowing about being autistic now has made my travel in my 3 years since my autism realization, it's made travel a lot easier. But what I always look forward to with travel is getting to be with people that I don't get to be with normally. That's 99% of the times I've traveled. It's been to see family or to see affinity group, friend group kind of things. And that is just always so worth it to get that social connection because I live far away from a lot of people. And so that's going to special certain places has been less of the appeal and it's more who I'm with. I mean, I've gone to Ohio repeatedly. Come on, you know?
Love it. Love it. I love what you said too about the getting there is one thing, but once you're there, it's a different piece of the travel puzzle. So I just want to acknowledge that and really honor that because it's great once we're there and we have all of our nice, pictures and our social media posts and we're like, yeah, what a great trip. And then somebody asks you like, oh, what about, oh, didn't you get food poisoning? Or, oh, didn't you get like major jet lag? And didn't you have a really hard time? No. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to forget about that because I'm here. I'm having a great time. So for me, I have traveled for different reasons. Most of my family is very close to me, so I haven't really needed to travel for that particular reason. Most of my traveling has come from work or international volunteering or vacations within when I was living overseas. I would travel for vacations as well. So different reasons, that we'll have a different context and we'll have different preparation needs and different challenges and victories. But for me, I always got a sense of accomplishment. when I was traveling. There was this element of like, I'm being brave, I'm being courageous, I'm leaving my comfort zone. I had an idea and I've prepared for it, planned for it, and now I'm executing it. I'm having some very interesting experiences through the travel. I'm meeting interesting people. And again, because I was either working or volunteering with like grassroots NGOs in different countries. I did some work after university and before grad school. I spent a couple years, different, like several months at a time. Spent some time in Ghana, India, Israel and Palestine, and Washington. And that was again more for a work volunteering context. And so I had a chance to really engage with my special interests, right? I was like working in human rights, social justice. I was meeting new people. I was exploring different cultures. I was like listening to other people who had totally different lives than mine. And I was really put, well, there's a word I'm looking for. I was just really willing to face my fears, right? Fears of, being far away from home, fears of maybe failing or doing things differently than I'd ever done before. So there's definitely that sense of accomplishment, my special interests, my values, as well as just, just seeing different places. There's a beauty in that. I'm learning new things. And I think sometimes for me as an autistic person, because there's so much routine involved, there's so much like rigidity in my routine, the ADHD piece of my personality, my wiring, really loved those opportunities of like, oh my gosh, we're doing something completely different than we've ever done before. Like, yay dopamine, yay for us, right? So that would be some of the best parts for me. But no discussion would be complete without some challenges. Are we willing to talk about our challenges? Of course we are. Of course we are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Always. Always. For me, I have a lot of different challenges with traveling. One of the biggest ones is eating. My grandparents, big part of why I travel is because of my grandparents. They lived in California, so they would fly me down all the time. So I'm very comfortable with like puddle jumping, like from one state to the next, like on the West Coast. Like that's fine. But when I was 12, 13, somewhere around there, they took me to Europe for 2 weeks. We went to Paris, we went to London, we went to Colchester, England. It was very, very cool. I enjoyed it a lot. But I had so much energy regulation issues on that trip. And my grandma ended up convinced that I had like a metabolic disorder. She's like, you were hypoglycemic because every time we ate a meal, you would immediately fall asleep. Come to realize years later, no, I was so overwhelmed and overloaded by everything, especially in France, because monolingual American, I didn't speak French, but my brain kept thinking I was understanding French. And then I didn't. And it turns out that that burns up your brain power at like 150% the speed that it normally would, even setting everything else aside. So every time we got through going out to a meal and I would be given like 30 seconds to like close my eyes, I would be out. It was sensory overload. I actually had an easy enough time eating on that trip, but in all the trips since, especially as I know I'm autistic, I can't eat when I travel. So now I'm exhausted for a different reason because I'm not even getting blood sugar. Food has been really hard for me. The lack of familiarity. It's just food turns into cement in my mouth. There's no salivation. There's no capacity for swallowing. Like the thing that smelled really good is now absolutely ick 3 seconds later. Like it's really hard. I have found hot sauce is the best solution. Add a little Tabasco to something, it will go down easier. Not easy, but easier. So that's been one of the hardest things for me is that a lot of times travel is to eat good food, right? People often want to do food. Food is a really good social activity. So again, I want to hang out with people, either cooking or going out to eat. Either way, food is a big part of socializing. And also, you literally need like calories in order to stand and walk and talk and keep your brain
Have your
running.
body still working?
Like it's a really, really huge comprehensive challenge for me to deal with food while traveling.
Yeah. I'm glad you started with that one because I do feel like that's such a big topic for people. One, because like exactly what you said, so many people, their vacations revolve around food, whether that be because it's, family and traditions, or we know we want to try this restaurant, or we want to try something local. And it was interesting all the times that I was living, for, several months at a time in different places, I would always make friends with people who were very food adventurous, right? They live for food, and they, like, for them, like, it was traveling was synonymous with trying as much as possible. And I remember telling one of the women I worked with, also Canadian, but again, very food adventurous. I was like, I really, I can't. My stomach is not handling this well. I've tried it, but I can't do it anymore. She's like, oh my goodness, I don't think I could even travel if I couldn't eat the food. And I'm like, well, I have just spent almost 7 months living on pineapple, Mr. Noodle, tuna, and bread. So, like, I know that that's not why I came to another country. Like, I was coming here obviously to work and to learn, but I would have loved to try all of the local fare. It's just my body would never cooperate. And again, whether that be because of, my safe foods, whether that be other, health issues that definitely complicate things when we're autistic, but also just kind of a little bit of autonomy, right? Like knowing that I had some control over what I was eating, and knowing that I was going to have the energy I needed because I wasn't getting sick all the time. Because, spending your whole time away being sick is not really what the doctor ordered either. So,
No, no one has a good time with that.
no, no. And so I feel like food is definitely a big one. So, and we'll be talking about like expectations versus reality throughout this whole episode. But, sometimes we do have to kind of understand the reality of the situation and acknowledge the fact that, what? Sometimes people will be sitting there eating something that we can't, and that's okay. We can still join in the conversation, right? Maybe I can try just a little bit and then I have to go back to something I'm familiar with, right? There's ways to make accommodations for ourselves, but part of it can be really challenging because there's that expectation of joining in, right? Joining in. I'd say some of the other challenges for me, aside from, changes to my regular routine and sensory overload and that fear of, oh my God, am I forgetting something? When you get to the airport, you're like, did I remember to pack everything I needed? Right. And scripting at an airport. So all of those would be challenges. But again, context matters. So when I was living in different countries, there's, just a lot to take in that's new. And I think what you had said about when you're trying to navigate a different language, right? There's a lot of mental energy. Well, navigating a new transportation system, like a new bus route, navigating a different language that's being spoken all around you, navigating just different cultural norms or expectations, different rules that you're expected to follow, right? It's hard enough for a lot of autistic people to figure out the norms in their country or culture of origin, let alone something new in a different language, right? I remember I was in Costa Rica. That's where I trained for my teaching English as a second language certification was there. And so I was living with a Spanish speaking family, and they only spoke Spanish. And thankfully, I do speak some Spanish. Oh, yay. But I did not fully comprehend how exhausting it would be to be constantly all day long listening to my second language and trying to interpret that and figure things out and then speak in that language and be understood, and like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I would get home at the end of the day after learning and teaching all day long, and then I would go like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like my brain felt like mush. It was so exhausted. But the reason I tell this story is one of the really cool benefits of traveling, or it can be a benefit, is the appreciation you can have for people whose lived experiences are different than yours, right? So, like, when I came back and I started teaching English as a second language at my local college, I had so much more compassion for my students, knowing how I knew how exhausted they were. I knew it because I had lived it. And I mean, that's just one example. But when we go out there and we go to different places and we experience different things and we listen to people and we learn from them, I think there's something beautiful about bringing back that newfound respect and understanding or willingness to understand, like back into our everyday lives. So I'd say that's really, for me, a cool benefit of traveling.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely knew a couple of exchange students when I was in middle school before I got taken to Europe. And Yeah, reflecting on what their experience was like, having to constantly be speaking in a second language that they were clearly very much still in the throes of learning while being with an exchange family. I didn't appreciate how exhausting that must have been until years later. And I was like, oh wow, they really were troopers. Like I knew they were troopers because they were, with a host family, et cetera, et cetera. But wow, going to school and then back to the home and like that family did not speak Thai.
Mhm.
Like it was just wow. I had no appreciation for that until I had experienced being in a country where I didn't speak the language and I didn't even have, more than 3 words of French figured out because I was 12.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, like, I'm going to be very, very clear, very, very clear on this. How do I word this? I am very, very privileged. And so I'm just getting a slight taste of what many different people experience. But the point is being willing to experience a different perspective, I think is really powerful because I understand that it is an amazing, amazing privilege to be able to even get on a plane and have the money and the ability and the opportunity to do so, right? So whether you're traveling by car an hour away to, a relative, or you're getting on a bus or a train or a plane, like all of these things can be dysregulating, they can be overwhelming, they can provide really interesting opportunities. But when we're talking about travel, we're talking about all forms of travel and also recognizing that it is a huge privilege to be able to even be having this conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think, to your point about all the different kinds of travel, what every single kind of travel needs, at least for almost every autistic person I've ever met, is buffer time. Whether it's an hour long drive or a day long multiple leg plane trip, like you need buffer time before because you will go into waiting mode almost definitely. Not to say nothing of planning and packing, but then also like it's so easy for us to not give ourselves enough transition time when we land, when we land at the place and when we land at home, right? Like landing back at your nest, we often don't give ourselves enough time. But even just like, oh, we're gonna land at 4 in the afternoon and then we'll all go out to dinner at 7. Like, but I am barely gonna have had a chance to like organize my brain in my hotel room by then. Like not because the ride to the hotel is a long distance, but because it takes me a long time to like collect my brain and like settle in. And it's one of the most neurotypical autistic differences I see is in how do you handle the day when you land at the location? How quickly do you go back to work after the vacation? Like I know so many neurotypical people who are fine with just, yeah, I have a day at home and then I'm back to work. It's like every autistic person I know, it's like 3 days minimum before any semblance of being a human being has entered the chat, you know?
Oh yeah, you're vacationing from your vacation for sure. Like you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just find there's just not enough transition time. Car trips, plane trips, train trips, we never get to build in enough buffer time. And when I do build in enough buffer time, my itinerary looks really spare and I'm not doing a whole lot because I've built in the buffer time I need to actually enjoy the 3 things that I'm doing. And of course, there's a whole shame cycle with that. So I think acknowledging that is a really important part of affirming traveling.
I love that so much. I love how you termed it buffer time and just being aware of our need for that transition time and that we are not able to just jump from one environment to the next without that bridge, right? And I think something that really bears stressing here is that often when we travel, not always, but if we travel with other people who maybe are not wired the same way we are, it's very easy to get sucked into the expectations of the group and of the itinerary, right? And there's this element, especially in Western countries, of maximizing our time and making sure every moment is being used to the utmost, right? Like, I don't care if you have driven 2 hours to go to the beach with your family or you are going across the world on some long planned vacation. It doesn't matter. There is this element of, well, we're gonna get up and we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna go to this restaurant and we're gonna go on this sightseeing tour, and then we're gonna have this activity, and then we're gonna go for dinner. And like they don't often build in the downtime that we really desperately need, the alone time that we often desperately need. It's like, well, no, this is a family vacation. I understand that, but I still might need some time to myself, right? Building that in. And again, when we don't know that we're autistic, we feel often and I've heard this from different people, like we're kind of the Debbie Downer. We're the ones keeping everybody from having a really great time because we have needs, right? Like, oh, can we just maybe slow down for a minute? Can we just take you guys go. I'll stay here. And it's like, oh, no, we want you to be here. It's like, I understand that, but I need just a little bit of time to breathe here. All right. This, I think of the example. So again, I have 5 brothers and sisters, and growing up, I had 2 parents, and so there's 8 of us, and we would go to this really nice little campgrounds every summer, and we'd rent a trailer, and there was lots of cool activities. There was, paddle boating and kayaking and swimming and all the fun stuff, right? Looked forward to it. It was great. But 8 people in a trailer, it's a lot. It's a lot. And if the weather wasn't great, right? Well, we're staying inside and we're playing games for like hours on end. And when you have like 2 little brothers at the time who just love to be loud and like screaming in a very small space, there is a picture of me, and I don't even know if it still exists, but there's a picture of me sitting by myself at a picnic table away from the rest of the group. And it looks like I'm absolutely miserable, and like my family makes fun of this for me for this all the time. I wasn't miserable. I was just breathing. I was just taking some time and just, in my own lovely thoughts, right? But because I wasn't engaged and extroverted 24/7, it's like, oh, you're not enjoying your time. It's like, I am. I just need a little bit for me, right? So I think that's a really important point. Like you say, transitions, buffers, but just understanding that your needs don't go away just because you're traveling. They don't. They actually ratchet up.
Yeah, no, one of the best experiences I've had in my like autism unmasking journey has been this event that I've gone to the last several summers. Bunch of nerds gathering in Ohio. Like I said, the only reason I go to Ohio is to hang out with my nerds.
I love it.
And everyone in that group, and the group chats like ahead of time, the Discord servers and all that, everyone's like, just so you know, guys, I'm kind of an introvert. Just so you know, guys, I'm gonna need to take breaks from everyone. Like, I'm sorry. And I've been in there for the past 3 years, just like, trumpet angel chorus, just like, it's okay to take breaks. We all need to take breaks. Did you realize literally every single person in this group has apologized for needing to take breaks? AKA, it's okay to take breaks. And I've had so many people come up to me and tell me that that's been helpful. Or I've
Oh,
seen them like on the edge of the group in their headphones playing with their phones. Like clearly they have not retreated to their room. They're just taking a little breather on the edge and no one's giving them shit because we're all a bunch of
yeah.
nerds. And me and a couple other people are just really out about like, these are my needs and this is what I'm doing. And it's been really fun seeing how like the group has just that's part of the culture of that group is like not getting on people's asses, but also it's a collection of odd birds who have like specifically gathered because that is what makes us alike.
I love
So,
that.
but it's been an experience of this is an alternative, right? This is an alternative to you need to be extroverted and doing stuff 24/7. The extroverts are going to go see the weird giant corn statue and the introverts are going to go to their rooms and rest before the next panel. Like, and no one has a problem with it. Like this world is possible is what I'm saying.
Yes. And I love, oh my God, I love that so much. And I would love to join at some point, but that sounds amazing. It's just reminding me of something though, when we are with people who are not like us, right? I love, and this made me think of 2 things. One, the need to be around people like us who understand, autism and our wiring and neurodivergence and just needing to take time and like longer processing speeds and all of the things that you can kind of let go and be yourself and unmask and all that fun stuff, right? But we don't always get to do that. And so I want to talk for a minute about the situations and those times when you are traveling with somebody who is neurotypical and when the competing needs are not on a level playing field or you don't know how to address them. So I'll give my example and then I'd love to hear yours. I was in a relationship with somebody years and years ago, and we traveled to Ohio, strangely enough, where his grandparents lived. And this was, it was his family and me, right? So his parents, his grandparents, etc. And it was all in one house. And there was this very not just implicit but explicit expectation that I would be present and accounted for like 24/7. Whether we're sitting around talking about nothing, or we're playing a game, or we're doing dishes, or we're prepping food, or we're out on the land, like it was me present. And at one point, and I remember this, and it was 15 years ago now, I remember looking at my then partner and saying, like, I need to go take some time in the bedroom. Like, I just need a few minutes. I need to be able to just breathe for a minute and decompress. So even though I didn't know I was autistic at all, I didn't even know what that would that was at the time, I knew I was highly sensitive, and I knew, again, that with quotation marks around that, but I was highly sensitive. I knew I got easily overwhelmed in, when I was around people for too long. I just didn't have the words for it. So I asked him, I just said, I need to go for a few minutes. And he just looked at me like, why would you need to do that? And I'm paraphrasing, but pretty accurately. It was this attitude that I was met with, of like, why would you need to be by yourself? Why would you need that downtime? Like, this is vacation. Like, just be with people. Like, and I didn't know how to handle it at the time, right? If it happened now, I would say, because I do, I'll see you in an hour, right? That's it. And the reason I'm telling this story is, like, the things that can change in us as we understand ourselves and learn about ourselves and our neurodivergence. It's incredible, the different decisions we can make, the conversations we can have. But at the time, I put the mask back on, and I sat there in distress and discomfort, wondering why my needs, like, were so weird. And so I really just want to honor anyone listening right now, that even if other people respond negatively to you having a need when you travel, it is not invalid. Like, what you need is what you need. And I think the more we can kind of plan for our trips with our needs in mind, we may be able to make it a little smoother.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't wish that I had a comparable story, but I really don't have a comparable story because all of my neurotypical family is very aware of the fact that they are the minority.
I love that so much. Oh my
And
God, I
like
love
they
it.
have been for like, as long as I've been alive, if not a bit longer. Like I just, for whatever reason, have a very neurodivergent and neurodiverse family. And the neurotypicals are a minority and they're very used to accommodating whatever weird quirks their family members have. I mean, the worst really was my grandparents just being confused at why I was so tired when they took me on this trip to Europe. But even then, it was from a place of concern and what do we need to do for you and like what's wrong rather than a place of like, how dare you? But I mean, it has also been a period of adjustment, right? They've learned a lot about me and they know different ways to check in with me, in the 20 something years since that trip. They're like, oh, like even now when I talk to my grandma sometimes, she'll be like, does this explain why that thing happened on our Europe trip or our New York trip a couple years later? And it's like, uh-huh, yep, glad we could figure that out.
I love that so much.
So again, it is very possible for your needs to be acknowledged and accepted. Like neurotypicals can choose better. It is possible. There are unicorn neurotypicals out there who are just like, huh, you seem very tired. We should probably investigate that. And sometimes it's not a medical issue, but the concern was there. If I did have hypoglycemia, by golly, my grandma was going to figure it out that year.
I love that so much. I love that so much. We can meet in the middle, right? We can. It's going to take some time and education, and, like, the more our neurotypical friends and family really take an interest and take a little bit of, time and energy investment into understanding, that's awesome and that's amazing and that should be celebrated, because as a general rule, autistic people do a lot of work in trying to explain and educate and bring people to some sort of a middle ground. And that's, it takes a lot of energy. Now, there are a couple things that I would love to talk about before we wrap up. I would love to talk about, what do you pack for your trips that you, like, must-haves, whether that be because of sensory or physiological needs, or just keeping you, happy and healthy and regulated. Like, what are your must-haves
Oh, packing.
or must-nots?
Well, I definitely always need the security of more clothing than I will actually need. You know, I always take more of everything because I'm worried that like I'm going to spill a drink on myself or something and just, so I always have to take extra clothes. I'm definitely an overpacker in that regard. But since learning that I'm autistic, well, okay, even before learning I was autistic, I've always thought of my jewelry as like stim toys that I can carry with me, even if I was just traveling to college for the day. My jewelry has always been a choice of like a stim toy that is acceptable to play with. That's also why I have long hair, is because I know that I have a stim toy that no one will bother me about. Also, I basically never wear perfume except when I'm going out and traveling. And then I wear just enough that I can smell it on me. So I have this little like force field of like even when it's like, oh, like don't wear scents. It's like, no, I'm wearing a very light amount of scent. It is for me. I am not trying to leave a scent trail. This is so that when I am standing here, I can smell, amber because I'm a hippie. Since learning that I'm autistic and really embracing strategies I've learned from other autistic people, I have found having a stuffed animal has been profoundly helpful for travel because I have someone to come back to in my room, like when I'm traveling solo in particular. If I have a spouse with me, then obviously, I have a living, breathing cuddle person. But if I'm traveling solo, having a stuffed animal psychologically really helps me because I have someone else to like make eye contact with and tell about my day, and then also to cuddle with as I sleep. That has been so, so helpful. And that I really would never have tried until I got into autism communities and saw how much stuffed animals were really good for people and was like, huh, I'm gonna try that. Oh, wow, that helps so much. The most important thing, though, noise canceling headphones. That has been the single most useful thing. My spouse just went on a business trip and I lent him my precious, precious noise canceling headphones. I suffered a week without them. I don't actually use the noise canceling. I just like them as my headphones. But I told him, you have to take these. You have to use them because he doesn't like the noise canceling thing, blah, blah, blah. He is going to buy himself a pair now because the noise canceling thing is really sensorily overwhelming unless you are in somewhere like an airport where the air itself is vibrating with circulation. And that is exactly the kind of noise that noise canceling perfectly zeroes out. It's really helpful in airplanes. Like, yes, your whole body is rattling from the whole airplane chassis rattling from the strength of the jet engines. However, you will still have some amount of brain left over at the end if you were wearing noise canceling headphones the whole time. This has been the most, like, I was already a headphone person. I've always been a headphone person since long before I knew I was autistic, but understanding how my nervous system is wired and seeing how profound of a difference those headphones made on my airplane travel experience, it just, wow. I could never not have that. So important.
Yes, that 110%. I could not agree with you more. Noise canceling headphones have been a game changer, not only for the noise itself, but also there's just something comforting to me about having them over my ears. And in some ways, it can also send off a signal that I am not open for conversation, right?
Absolutely. I've been doing that since like the 20 teens. I'm just like, no, big, huge monitor headphones. That is my look since way before it was cool.
Exactly, exactly. And like, there's just something about that for me. Also, like a face mask. I need, like, if I'm in a hotel or something like that, I really need complete darkness when I sleep. So I have that.
I only just learned about those this last year, and oh my God, game changer. I had never tried in like, I'm like 8 months into having an eye mask now, and like, I'm never going back. Oh my God. I had no idea what I was missing.
It's huge. It's huge. And connected with sleep for me is my pillow. I cannot do fluffy pillows. My pillow is very, very, very almost completely flat at this point, and that is what works for me. Anything higher than that, like I get neck pain. And so having my pillow is really important. And similar to what you said, I do sometimes tend to overpack, but that's usually because where places I go, I don't know what's going to be available to me. I don't know how quickly I'm going to be able to find it. I don't know how different the weather's going to be. And oftentimes, like, okay, I am Canadian. So even if I'm traveling within my own country, it can be cold, rainy, and hot all in the same day. And so I need to know that, like, well, if this weather happens, I'll be ready for it. And if this weather happens, I'll be ready for it. Or if I go into a restaurant, it's really cold because they've got the air on so high, I'll have my sweater with me that's really soft and cozy. So I like knowing, even though it's not great to like be lugging that much around, like sensory wise, just knowing that I have the things that are like familiar to me and that can address different needs. I find that really helpful psychologically. I do like to take a good book, like a fun, interesting, easy to read book. I'm not talking about a textbook. I'm talking about just for fun and like maybe a journal because I find sometimes when I'm traveling, it's just if I'm feeling overwhelmed, it's just nice to put some, things on paper and not have to whip out anything electronic, just pen to paper kind of thing. And comfortable clothes. I know that sounds really obvious, but I no longer wear jeans, for example. I found a pair of pants that are so comfortable that I then went out and bought two more exact pair. And they can double as like business casual or casual casual because they are drawstring.
Hell yes.
No buttons, no zippers. Just that elasticy
I love drawstring pants.
and it doesn't look like it. And that's the best part because, if you still have to go, teach or do a meeting or something, like you still look professional if you put something, you know, a little bit businessy on the top. But that is huge. Comfortable shoes, comfortable socks, comfortable pants, just being comfortable because bottom line, there's so much with traveling that is not comfortable. I need to be in my own skin comfortable.
Oh, that reminds me of the other one that I should have mentioned that's really important. I have to bring my own soaps.
Mm,
I have to bring my own soap, my own shampoo, my own moisturizer. Like I can deal with like the hotel soap for like washing my hands. Fine, whatever. But I cannot be showering in whatever. Nope. No, it smells disgusting. It smells horrible. I am drowning in perfume. I need my very specific unscented or scented one very specific way products. Like, oh my God, last time I had to deal with like, do I want my skin to be dry and cracking or do I want to smell like the worst moisturizer in the history of moisturizers? Like, I need to have my own sense for my body care. Like, absolutely.
yep, yep. And this is something I think this is so important because so many of these things are small in the sense of it doesn't take up that much space in your bag to bring your own soap and moisturizer, right? But it can make a world of difference in how you're feeling, and how regulated you feel, and just your comfort level, right? And I feel like the word comfort has gotten a really bad rap in a lot of circles because optimize and productive, like all of those words don't are not really compatible with the word comfort. And to that I say things that I won't say because we're a family friendly show. I want people who are autistic to just kind of, if they feel they if this resonates with you, like just lean into that need for comfort and familiar, especially when you're traveling. Nobody gets an award for suffering. Nobody gets an award for making things as hard as it has to be. And like, oh look, I just navigated this whole travel experience with like zero support and look at me. Yeah, we're looking at you because you look so miserable and dysregulated, like, and we feel bad for you, right? So comfort is not a bad word. And anyone who says, "Oh my gosh, you're so high maintenance," show them the door, please, right? Because that is so like, well, it's so dismissive, first of all. And like just don't let anyone tell you that your needs are invalid. I think that's my big theme of the day because I'm telling that to myself. But the other thing I really want to talk about here for a second is something that I never used, but I want to know if you have. Have you ever used accommodations at the airport? Like lanyards or like disclosing and getting help with early boarding. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't know about when I was traveling. And now that I've talked to more autistic people, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Have you used any assistive, accommodations when you're traveling?
I have not. This is one of those things where it's both kind of new information to me. I didn't really know about all the sunflower stuff until, yeah, like the last year. And then also, it's one of those last vestiges of, well, I'm not really disabled. I'm high functioning. I don't need to take up space. I don't need it. Like, it's, for the most part, I've gotten rid of most of those brain pretzels, but this is definitely one where it's like, I can mask. It's not a big deal. I'll just stay out of the way and I don't want to be singled out. Also, there's also a lingering like I don't need it. I don't have a real issue with doing the expectations in air travel, and I don't want to be singled out. I don't want to deal with misunderstandings, and it sounds like more of a pain in the ass. But that is very much an expression of my physical and mental privilege with just the way that my disability shows up. It's easier to just mask and stay in line than to try to like ask for accommodations. I don't know what I could ask for that would make my travel easier. But I also do also recognize I have a lot of internalized ableism keeping me from really exploring that. So check in with me in a year or two.
Yeah, yeah. And also, like, just to be really super clear on this point, we acknowledge the fact that every country is different, and like some countries disclosing is not going to feel safe right now. And to be public about your disability in an airport might not feel safe to you, and that's completely understandable, and I respect that completely. Similar to you, I didn't really know that a lot of these things were a possibility. Well, let's be honest, before 3 years ago, I didn't really understand invisible disabilities at all.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
the more that we educate ourselves and we start to understand our own wirings, yeah, I don't know if I'm at a place where I would be comfortable with the sunflower lanyard, only because I don't know how much other people understand it.
That part. Yeah. I don't want to do the education.
Having to kind of navigate and explain and be the educator, like it may add more stress to me in an already stressful situation. So for me, things like getting there early and packing the things that we talked about and checking my list 17,000 times and giving myself the buffer time before and after, managing my expectations, like all of those things are accommodations that I am building in to travel. But when it comes to, I would say the one thing that would probably really help me though is early boarding. I would think that that would be such a sensory overwhelm reduction, possibility for me. Just being able to get into my seat and sit down and then let everyone come around me as opposed to like trying to shove my way through. But again, I haven't traveled much since my diagnosis. So I think that would just be something that I would want to look into, for future travel. Not to say I would or I wouldn't use it, but I just wanted to bring it out there for our listeners because depending on your country, depending on your needs, that could be a really cool option for people to get some of that assistive device. And it could, like, for people who it eases the stress, great. That's wonderful. Because that leads to the question about what happens if you have a meltdown while you are traveling, right? What do you do? Again, we've already talked about the fact that for some of us, that is, for some autistic people, that is comes with a lot of privilege. That if we had a meltdown, we might get looked at like we're weird, but everyone would go on with their day. Whereas other autistic people who do not carry that same privilege, it could be very, very dangerous. So, having said that, if you do sense that a meltdown is coming, what do you do?
I have mastered the art of the internal meltdown, which again, I know not all autistic people have that capacity, but I very much have mastered the art of the internal meltdown. I've definitely had a few instances where I could not hide that I was having a meltdown, but it was also subtle enough and paired well enough with my privilege that it did not cause me any issues. Yeah, for me it's the lock it down and deal with it later. I have not had many instances of having to experience that. What am I saying? I'm basically borderline meltdown over whenever I travel. But yeah, I all of my practice with internal meltdowns is kind of how I handle that. But also, I have the headphones, right? So I can turn up my stim music really, really loud until it hurts because I know that that will like bring me into regulation quite quickly. I've got ways to draw inward until I can like get it settled down. And then, travel mostly they just want you to be quiet and still and keep to yourself. So if, I can put up that facade, it's actually quite sturdy for just holding on to the meltdown until later. I know that's not super healthy and not applicable to everyone, but that's me.
Yeah, yeah, we can only talk about our own lived experience. We're not pretending that it's universal. We're not pretending that it's always, the healthiest option, but we do what we do and we do the best we can. The more that I understand meltdowns, the more that I understand why they happen, and the more that I understand my needs, of course, we can perhaps plan for things, right? Like you said, having that noise canceling headphone with the music in it, for me, giving myself lots of time, knowing that if the recommended time to get there is 2 hours, I'm gonna be there like 3 hours. It's just knowing that if there's any potential, challenges. So for example, my last big trip when I was moving up north for the school year, I lost my passport, right? Went through security and was packing everything back up and my passport. And then I walked away and I didn't have my passport. So I ran back. And so again, very stressful, very dysregulating, had to talk to many, many people and eventually got it found. But if I had been rushing and not giving myself enough time, like that would have been, I would have been on the floor, right? So knowing who we are, how we're wired, and what we need can be helpful in all situations, but especially traveling, giving ourselves that extra buffer time, the sensory friendly items, the comfort items. And I said it again, but I'm going to say it one more time. Being okay if what actually happens on your trip, your travel experience, is not the same as what you imagined it would be, right? Allowing it to just be what it is instead of that picture perfect travel that goes great on Instagram, because it's usually not for us.
Yeah, calibrating your expectations to your nervous system is really worthwhile because, then you can have, the couple of cool pictures on Instagram where you're like, yeah, that was the peak day. We went and did the thing. It was fantastic. I spent the whole trip building up to and recovering from this particular event. And here's my one picture. And it represents such a personal triumph. Like that is an expectation you can have. You have to calibrate the expectations down to what your nervous system can handle, which can be disappointing, but it can also be quite validating to be like, yeah, but I did do the one thing that one day and it was amazing because I actually knew how to take care of myself. And it wasn't just borderline meltdown the whole time because you were having the wrong expectations. Yeah, it's complicated and simple at the same time.
I think that's an absolutely perfect place to end when you said calibrating your expectations to our nervous system. I think that kind of encapsulates a lot of what we talked about today.
And there we have it, a friendly and autistic discussion around traveling, which covered why we travel, eating while traveling, the energy cost of a language barrier, essential packing items, dealing with meltdowns, and helped me appreciate the neuroaffirming need for comfort while traveling. As a reminder, we are all peer support coaches within the Autistic Peer Support Coaching Collective, offering a variety of free and paid intentionally autistic spaces. You can learn more and follow us at our website, autisticcoaches.com. You can support us by sharing the podcast with your friends, peers, and anyone who lives with, works with, or loves an autistic person. Thank you for listening to us talking about autistic stuff for autistic people. New episodes come out on alternating Mondays. Keep the conversation going on our Blue Sky feed or send us your constructive comments and feedback via email at autisticstuffpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, practice calibrating your expectations to your nervous system. Autistic Stuff for Autistic People is a production of Fox and Draven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Draven Media, visit our website, foxanddravenmedia.com.